I'm Barry Mosier. This is my family. I'm a certified public accountant by profession and worked about 20 years in Minnesota. Before we moved as a family as volunteers to Tanzania for 8 years. And during the time that we were in Tanzania, my son Keith felt a call to work in the Congo. And Mary Beth and I weren't very excited about that because, well, the news reports from Congo were pretty bad. But later on, he did indeed, after his education, get moved to Congo and asked us to come and join him in the ministry there. Well, we decided to go as a family and see if we thought we could accept that call. We knew the Lord would tell us what to do, and we went to visit him. So in April 2008, we were on our way to visit Keith in Kisangani and just boarded the last plane in Goma. We were just ready to take off, and I called Keith and said, "Son, we'll see you in 45 minutes." And we had prayer, and the plane started heading down the runway, and just as we got to the takeoff speed, we heard a bang underneath the plane, and that was one of the engines failing. And then when he put on the brakes, the front tire blew out. So we were almost out of runway at that point because the runway in Goma is only about 2/3 of a runway after the volcano overflowed in 2000. So we were at the end of the runway, and he slammed on the brakes. Now we're skidding off the end of the runway through a boulder field. As we passed through that boulder field, the wheels of the plane broke off, and we skidded on the belly of the plane, kind of disintegrating the plane. And finally, we crashed through some buildings, and as we went through those cement walls, the wings of the plane kind of broke up. Final impact was onto an open-air market, and the impact of the plane was strong. Mary Beth broke her nose, and my glasses flew off of my face. And I started feeling for my glasses right away on the floor, but April said, "Dad, we've got to get out of this plane." And as I looked up and April ran past me to head to the front of the plane, I was just horrified to see Mary Beth and Andrew on the other side of the plane, and outside of the window was just flames. And everybody in the plane knew that we were looking death in the face because the plane was full of fuel, it was running everywhere. And everybody had the same idea, get out of this plane. April had already jumped up and run ahead, and I jumped across the aisle and picked up Andrew and started forward in the plane. Well, just ahead of us, a few seats, all of the seats had crumbled down to the bottom of the airplane. And as I was moving ahead with Andrew, I just about reached that point when the mass of people, the stampede of people, kind of pinned us against the seats on the right side of the plane. And I tried to pull Andrew out, and I just couldn't pull him out. But I remember thinking, "Andrew, I can never leave you. If we're going to burn together."
Everything seemed like a dream, a bad dream, a nightmare, in fact. I started to pray, and I prayed, "Lord, if it's okay, if it's my time to die, please let it be quick," because I had seen burn patients. I had taken care of some burn patients as a nurse and knew it could be really bad. I passed down the aisle, and it seemed like an eternity going down that aisle. But I came to the place where Andrew was, and he was stuck in the seats. I yanked him from a different angle, and I was able to get him free. But that's when I broke his leg. From then on, everything seemed like it was in slow motion. I started to go over the tops of the seats. As I was looking down, there was a hole in the bottom of the plane, and flames were starting to come up through. There was a man's hand that was sticking up, reaching up to me, and saying, "Please help me." And I grabbed a hold of his hand and pulled, but I couldn't get him out. And the people were pushing behind me, and I was blocking the aisle, so I had to leave him behind. When I went forward over the seats, I saw a hole that April had made.
When I first saw the airplane was on fire, I was scared, and I knew that I should try to get out. So I got up and I jumped over my dad, and I started racing down the aisle with a bunch of other people who were also trying to escape. When I got to the front of the airplane, I looked around and I couldn't find any way out. I was trapped. And then I looked over at the right side of the airplane, and I saw this man just standing there looking at this crack that was about 6 inches long. So I raced over to him, and I told him in Swahili, I actually yelled at him in Swahili, "Tufungue hapa au tutakufa," which means we need to open this crack, otherwise we're going to die. And so we started just ripping it open with our bare hands. And it's amazing because my hands I didn't get hurt, but anyways, we just ripped it open, and when I thought it was big enough, I went through head first, but unfortunately I got stuck. And so I was just hanging there. I didn't know what was going to happen, if I was just going to hang there and die, burn up and die, or if I would be able to get out. But fortunately, somebody inside pushed me out all the way, and I landed nicely on the ground, and I jumped up, and I went to the front of the airplane where there was a flight attendant just standing there, and I told her that my parents were still in the airplane and that I didn't know if they were going to get out, and she told me to just run down the road and away from the airplane before it exploded. So I started racing down the road, and I would look back occasionally to see if my parents had gotten out, but I couldn't see if they'd gotten out. And first of all, I was hoping they'd get out, but later on I didn't have any more hope. I just couldn't see them, and so I just kept racing to get away. And then this soldier came up and he grabbed my hand and he said, "I need you to come with me." So he basically pulled me, dragged me into the car, the police car, and they started driving, and I told them I was crying, and I told them that they need to take me to ADRA because my parents are dead. But instead they took me to a hospital.
As I carried Andrew to the front of the airplane, we were crawling over crumpled seats. There was smoke everywhere. You could hardly breathe. There's fire coming in. There's people partly on fire. It was just terrible. But we finally made it up to that crack, or the hole that April had made and someone had enlarged. And a man was standing there like this. And I handed Andrew out the hole and then went back in to find Mary Beth. It was so smoky you could hardly see anything. But I found Mary Beth, and we got back out the hole and ran across the street to get a little ways away from the airplane. And as we got across the street, we looked back, and then the middle section of the airplane just exploded. But it was completely chaos outside. There was about 10,000 people who ran to see the airplane crash. And there were people partly trapped underneath the plane, and people were wailing and searching for loved ones. And we were hysterical ourselves, looking for our children. And after the explosion, we started to go down the street, and a man ran up to us with Andrew, the man who had taken him. And we said, Mary Beth said, my child. And the man turned away. He didn't want to give Andrew to us. He was looking for a different mother for Andrew. But I felt my pocket, and I said, praise God, because in my jacket pocket, our passports were still there. And I showed him our passport. He gladly gave Andrew to us, and we kept moving down the street looking everywhere we could for April, but in this just chaos, we couldn't find her anywhere. Finally, an emergency vehicle picked us up and took us off to the hospital. At the hospital, we found the man who actually had pushed April out the hole in the plane, so we knew she was alive. And there, amidst the stretchers, there were stretchers going by with bodies on them and people laying covered up on the ground. I looked off in the distance. Even without my glasses, I saw a small girl in a red shirt coming our way, and I knew it was April. And I tell you, I got up and ran towards her. I felt like my feet weren't even touching the ground. And Mary Beth was behind me with Andrew, and we just started hugging each other and crying and laughing. And April really never expected to see us again until Jesus comes. And right there amidst all that was happening at that hospital, we prayed and sang songs and just praised God for sparing our lives. Mary Beth just kept saying, I can't believe our whole family is alive. We're alive, we're alive. After a while, we got Andrew's leg in a cast, and I can still remember that night sitting there together wondering what to do next. We were just still in shell shock. 47 people had died in the airplane crash, most of them that were on the ground. But April said, Dad, I think that God is telling us not to move to Congo. And I can tell you, that was the feeling we all had. It was like, get us out of this country, not in an airplane, and we don't ever want to see this place again. But we continued on, wondering, should we go on to Kisangani or what? But a young man wrote us an email. When many would be discouraged and thought we would give up, he wrote and said, Paul was shipwrecked 3 times. Go on to Kisangani. And that was a big encouragement to us. 4 days later, in fact, we made the decision to go on to Kisangani. And as we were here in Kisangani with Keith, over the next couple of weeks. We said there's no reason we should be alive except God has more work for us to do. And if He has more work for us to do, and if He can take care of us through an airplane crash, He can take care of us through anything. We decided that He was calling us to come to Congo and work. And we've been here for over 2 years now, and God has blessed the work that we've done. We know that this is where we're supposed to be, and we praise God for sparing our lives so that we can have the privilege of working for Him here in Kisangani with Keith, trusting in Him day by day. We're just grateful for the chance to serve Him here.